I am Stan Edwards with the Montgomery County Department of Environmental Protection. I'm here with Nasser Kamazani, who's a senior engineer with DEP. I'm new to this activity, relatively new to this activity. You may know Dave Lake. He retired from our department at the beginning of this year, and I've taken over his duties. I'm happy to answer any questions after they do the presentation. I don't think I should answer questions now, but after they do the presentation so you know more about what their current plan is. One thing I want to emphasize here is that DEP does not have a regulatory role in this project. There is no requirement for WSSC to come to DEP to get a review. Dave had asked some questions about the details of the project, and that was answered in this report. Those questions are answered in this report, which is posted on the website. We've been out to the site, as Karen said, several times with the project engineers, and Councilmember Elrich was out there with us and walked the site and looked at different options. We've spent many hours talking to council staff members about the project. So I think we have a pretty good idea of the options that have been pursued. It's a tough site. I mean, there's no doubt about that. There's challenges no matter how you go. From what we can see, WSSC's current plan, we think is factoring in all the environmental impacts, the cost, the feasibility of doing things. We think the horizontal directional drilling approach that they're taking right now is the best option. But there are always things you can look at and improve on, and I think continued communication with the community and with DEP and WSSC is important as the project proceeds. But I'll let them go ahead and do their presentation, and we can answer questions you might have.
Thanks, Stan. Today we're going to talk about, we're going to provide some details on phase 2 of Takoma Park Water and Sewer Rehabilitation Project. Phase 2 of the project. So, what happened to this now? Yeah, my name is Busan Basnet. I'm gonna go through all project team member in next slide. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. My name is Busan Basnet. I'm the design project manager. Some of the people in the project team are Kevin Lethbridge, construction manager, is right there. We have Curtis Pinder, technical contract manager. He's not here with us today. We have Brandon Stewart, customer advocate, is there. And the designer, project designer is the Wilson T. Ballard Company. Today, we're gonna talk about 2 alignment solutions. The solution number 1 will be sewer main installation on the backyard using horizontal directional drilling. And the solution number 2 is sewer main installation on the front yard using grinder pump options. So our designer, Mr. John Martin and Dave Kerr will be talking about both of these designs. They will provide some of the facts and details on both of these designs. And we have Ms. Claudia, who will be providing us some details and process for voting and selecting one of these options. There are forms available for voting here tonight. There will be some details at the end of this, towards the end of this presentation. In both of these options, we have a total of 31 properties included in this project. Those are 6617 to 6761 Eastern Avenue, 55 and 57 Walnut Avenue, 105 First Avenue, 6702, 6704, 6710, 6800, 6802, and 6814 Westmoreland Avenue. Some of the factors that we have considered during the design development are expectations from residents and the community, concerns and questions received from Montgomery County Department of Environmental Protection, City of Takoma Park guidelines, multiple site reviews involving Montgomery County Department of Environmental Protection, City of Takoma Park, and WSSC. And these factors are very important for us moving forward in design, and we'll consider those till final design. Project documents, residents can access to project documents online at www.wsscwater.com/Eastern. And some of the available documents are list of questions submitted to WSSC by Montgomery County Department of Environmental Protection. WSSC's response to those questions, hydrology report, 30% design plans and documents, and previous meeting information are also available there. At this point, I would like to invite Mr. John Martin to go over the design options.
Okay, good evening, everybody. To start with, we'll start with the water main installation, or we're saying this is in the front yard. We have 30% design completed for the water main installation. It's about a quarter of a mile of 8-inch diameter new ductile iron pipe installed within the street right-of-way. That would be Little Eastern Avenue. And then 1.5-inch diameter copper service, just a small pipe installation from the street, Little Eastern Avenue, to the service lines in the backyard. So to do this, the project requirements would be temporary easement for the new service line that would be on the private property, so that the contractor can take the new service connection from the street around the back of the houses. The ground disturbance for this option will be trench excavation within the street right away to install the new water main. That's the trench that they will dig to put the new water main into, cover it back over, repave. It'll only be 30 or 40 feet at a time so that we don't hold up traffic or don't hold it up too badly, so that access is maintained. And then there'll also be trench excavation for the service lines installed from the street to the backyard. That's to go from the new pipe in the street around the back of the house to where the current service line is. Also add in, there'll be some new fire hydrants installed on Little Eastern Avenue to bring the fire service up to code. So that's the water installation.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay, I'll hold it to the end.
Yeah, that'd probably be better.
What page is this on?
This is 6. Moving on to the sewer main installation, as Busan said, there's 2 solutions. Solution 1 is going to be a backyard. This design is also 30% complete. Consists of 0.19 miles of 8-inch diameter polyvinyl chloride pipe, better known as PVC, installed in the backyard. That'll be 8-inch diameter main, and then a 4-inch diameter service connection from the new pipe to the edge of the easement line. That will connect the existing service pipe to the new service, or to the new main. Also, new manholes and cleanouts will be installed. Cleanouts at each service connection, a few manholes throughout. Project requirements for this is a 20-foot wide permanent easement for new main installation, and a 10-foot wide temporary easement for laterals in the backyard. It's across all the backyards so we can get the new main in. And also be some requirements for access paths to get to those work areas for putting in new main. This solution 1 is the plan is to install it with horizontal directional drilling to reduce impacts to the community. I know a little bit about horizontal directional drilling. I brought Dave along, who knows a whole lot more, so he's going to talk about that a little bit.
Thank you. So the horizontal directional drilling option, I don't know how familiar you are with that process, but it's referred to as a trenchless process. It's basically the guys you see on the side of the road drilling from Verizon, and that similar process, but a little bit much more controlled and maybe a little bigger machine. So approximately 90% of the backyard sewer main, the main line, will be installed trenchlessly. We can't completely avoid digging, but we can reduce that down quite significantly. From a access point of view, we're going to need access from 3 different locations. The first, the main one, one of the locations will be First Avenue on the backside, but there will also need to be 2 other accesses, which I'll show you here in a moment. There will be 3 locations for drill, entry, and exit, and I'll explain a little bit more where they will be and what the positions are for that. There will be 4 sewer manholes, 1 at each end, obviously, 1 at First Avenue, and there's another one, another intermediate one, which I'll show you where that will be located. And obviously, we're going to have to dig for each one of those lateral connections from your house to this new line. So every property will have an excavation to make that final connection. And we do have a small portion of open cut installation as well. So looking at the map, access points, there's an access point we've selected here, and there's another access point located down on this end, as well as at First Avenue. For our drilling operation, the initial intent is to drill, so the drill rig will sit here at this end and drill in this direction towards First Avenue, and make the exit here. So there'll be an entry pit and an exit pit located here, which in that entry pit, for example, we actually will be installing the manhole in that location as well. So that will do double duty there with only 1 excavation. And then there'll be another entry pit at this end here for a shorter directional drill in this direction. All being tied together here. This is the low point in the sewer. And there's an open cut portion located here. Each one of these locations here are the approximate locations of the sewer laterals that will have to be dug for each one of the homes. Don't have anything else at this point in time. Would you like to jump on the next phase?
Sounds good. Thank you. All right, and then moving on to solution 2. Sewer main installation solution 2, front yard. This design is also 30% complete. This is 0.22 miles of 2-inch diameter pressure sewer installation within the street right-of-way. That again is Little Eastern, 2-inch diameter pressure sewer. And then 1.25-inch diameter pressure lateral installations from the street, Little Eastern, around to the backyard where the existing sewer laterals leave the house. A few manholes would be installed in the street with this solution. The solution would include grinder pumps in the backyard to pump the sewage up from the lateral in the backyard up to the street, up to Little Eastern. A few requirements for those grinder pumps: the installation of a dedicated breaker in the electrical panel inside of each home to power the grinder pump. Installation of electrical conduit from the electrical panel in the home to the backyard. That'll take the electric from the panel to the grinder pump. And then installation of necessary electrical accessories for the grinder pump. That's primarily a shutoff switch in the back, which can be viewed from wherever the grinder pump is. Ground disturbances with this solution: trench excavation within street right-of-way to install the new sewer main. That's the trench in Little Eastern. Trench excavation for service lines installed from the street to the backyard that's within the private property. And then a pit excavation for the grinder pump installation. The pit's maybe 8 feet in diameter or so, would be over top of the existing sewer lateral. So wherever that lateral is kind of determines where the pit would be for the grinder pump. Project requirements: temporary easement from street to backyard for lateral and grinder pump installation. Right of entries to access into the home for the electrical inspection and installation of necessary electrical accessories. And electrical inspection of each property. Would also require available space in each electrical panel to add a new breaker for the grinder pump. And this would all require approximately 6 months of additional time to complete the design, going through all those right of entries, inspections, figuring out what electrical service is available and what we need. So here's a little display of what it would look like with the grinder pump. Just a little graphic. The grinder pump is in the back here on the sewer lateral. Would pump up here to Little Eastern. Little Eastern's up here. And we're also showing in blue the water connection. That's the same for either solution, whether we have the horizontal directional drill gravity solution or the grinder pump solution. The water connection is the same for either one. So we'll move on to the tree impacts and mitigation. We're of course at 30% design, so we got to have a ways to go yet to have a final design. The front yard water and backyard sewer option, which is solution 1, the installation or the construction activities that impact the trees would be the installation of water service lines from the street to the backyard, also the installation of the sewer laterals and installation of backyard sewer main using horizontal directional drill. We're estimating at 30% design approximately 12 trees have been identified to be removed. I'd like to note that this is a 50% decrease from the previous open cut method, where we would dig a trench for the sewer main in the backyard rather than using horizontal directional drill. So that was for solution 1. For solution 2, the construction activities that would impact trees would be installation of water service lines from the street to the backyard, same as solution 1, and also installation of sewer laterals from the street to the backyard, and the installation of the grinder pump, which would be a 8-foot diameter pit that we'd have to dig to put the grinder pump in. Tree impacts for this solution will have to be determined at the 90% design phase after the backyard grinder pump location has been finalized. So that is ongoing, or will be ongoing. Tree impact and mitigation. Trying to protect the trees as much as possible with tree trunk protection installed as needed. The trees will be fenced as needed. The mains and laterals will be installed trenchlessly at every possible location. And we'll also use some Alternamat, which we will install for the root protection as needed. Alternamat is basically kind of a large mat that you lay down around the tree so that when the construction equipment drives near the tree, it's not hurting the roots of the trees. Try to protect them as much as possible. Tree replanting, there will be the selection of appropriate species and planting locations. Every removed tree will be replaced with at least 2 new trees, and the new trees will be planted under WSSC's forester's inspection. It's Doug here or some others at WSSC. Reviews and inspections will be by the WSSC urban forester, Doug, the City of Takoma Park Forester, and also the Montgomery County Department of Environmental Protection. They can also review and inspect. And then here's some tree protection measures. Tree trunk protection. Shows some boards strapped to the trees so that the construction equipment, if it accidentally does hit a tree, it doesn't damage the tree. The middle picture there is the Alternamat, showing they're protecting grass, can also protect the tree roots and other vegetation. And then tree fencing, just to say, you know, here's a tree, be careful, I want to save this tree. So with that, that wraps up the kind of technical design aspects of this. Claudia's going to talk a bit next.
Good afternoon, or really good evening. My name is Claudia Koenig. I'm an Associate Counsel 2. I'm an attorney for the Washington Suburban Sanitary Commission, and you will be selecting option 1 or option 2? How do I change this thing? Next. There. You have heard about solution number 1, which is the solution involving the 20-foot wide easement that's going to be going across your backyard. That is an easement to WSSC for the purposes of installation, inspection, maintenance, operation of our sewer main. We will also need a temporary easement or a temporary construction easement that's going to be 10 foot wide so that we can connect our sewer main to a lateral. So that's the first solution. The solution number 2 is the grinder pump solution, and that involves a temporary easement so that we can come onto your property and put in the grinder pump and the connection to the sewer main that's going to be in the street. Those are your 2 options. You can pick up the voting document tonight, or if you don't want to pick it up, what we're going to do anyway is probably mail it out to those persons who are not here, and we're going to mail it out by the end of this week. So by Friday, they will be in the mail. You will have approximately 2 weeks to respond, to vote, and you can either email them to me, and my email is on the voting document, or you can mail them back to me. And what I want to stress to you is that for the grinder pump solution, solution number 2, to be implemented, we need unanimity. Unanimity. Boy, I sound like President Trump. God. You need to have unanimous voting for solution number 2. So solution number 1 does not require unanimity, but number 2 does. And the reason being, I'm sure you have been told previously, is because we cannot zigzag the sewer main in and out of properties to the front, to the back, to the front, to the back, like a zipper. It needs to be perfectly straight for it to work properly. So at the end of this presentation, you can either vote tonight and hand me the document, or you can wait till you receive it in the mail, or you can take one home with you, think about it, look through it, and then respond. Thank you.
At this point, we're ready for question and answers. So we're gonna go to up there, right? So everyone will sit together and answer questions. Can we take this up there? Can we take this up? Oh, that's over there. Okay.
Go ahead.
Hi, good evening. I'm Nancy Glass from Westmoreland Avenue. So first of all, just a comment. It's exciting. I know you all had previously committed publicly to using the horizontal drilling technique, which was something we had asked for in the backyard alignment option, and it's exciting to see that's still part of the plan, and that's great news. So thank you for that. I guess my first question is, I'm just really confused. This is sort of surprising because I thought we had gone through this years ago with the voting, and it'd be helpful just to understand the process. Why is it we're back to voting?
There were some concerns at the last vote because people who did not vote accounted towards the backyard alignment. So in order to satiate those concerns, we decided to do the vote over again, bringing in our general counsel's office to better clarify what each vote means and how each vote would go and what is necessary in order to have the different type of options.
Okay, and so along those lines, what will, if a home property doesn't vote, how will that be counted?
If a property owner does not vote, there will be no vote for that property. That does not count for either solution 1 or solution 2. That's
So if
0.
if you had, and what happens if there's, so if it's an equal vote, then it goes to backyard, because then there's neither wins, but there has to be unanimity for it to be in the front. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
It has to be unanimous for solution 2. So one person voting for solution 1 it destroys or obviates solution 2.
Okay.
So everybody has to vote for solution 2 for solution 2 to go forward.
And there was a block of properties that had already decided on the grinder pumps, and that was going to be handled separately. Is that still going ahead with grinder pumps, or are they part of the new vote as well?
I'm sorry, could you repeat yourself?
Sure. There was, in the previous arrangement, there was a group of properties down on one end of Little Eastern that had already voted as a group for the grinder pumps, and thanks. They were going to get the grinder pumps. So is that still their plan, or are they now part of? Do they have to re-vote?
I believe that was phase 1, and it was 3 properties, and because of where they were in the alignment and in the spacing at the very end, and since they were all together, I think they are having grinder pumps installed, but I think Busan or John can answer that.
So the sub-block that you are referring to, 6600, they're gonna have to re-vote again. Even if, so they, everyone need to re-vote, everyone from 6617 to 67, let me.
No. Yeah, that's it. I think it's.
So under phase one, there were 3 houses. Those are already under grinder pump option.
Mm-hmm.
So there were another sub block. I believe that you are referring to that, right next to 66. There were 6621 to 6637. If you are referring to that, then all of those property owners need to re-vote.
Okay. At any rate, the phase 1 is phase 1. That's not part of the vote. That's
Right.
Okay. Got
right.
it. That answers my question. Thank you. So now this is a question about trees for the backyard alignment. I did notice that in WSSC's responses to DEP's questions, which you had posted online, there were 5 trees listed as being marked for removal in that plan, and you're mentioning 12 tonight. What accounts for that discrepancy?
So the 5 trees were identified only for the sewer main installation.
So it's 12 total.
Right. So the 5 was only for sewer main installation, and the 7 additional are including the lateral connections. So those 7 were not included in that SDD report that you are referring to.
I see. And is that because the design plans are a little further along now, that you now know where these lateral connections are going to go? Or I guess what I'm asking is are those additional 7 posted somewhere online that we can see which 7 trees it'll be? Or is that information not being provided yet?
They are not posted online,
Okay.
but we're in a process to put them together and post it online.
Okay. Oh, and when will that be?
Once we move forward and start developing the design further.
Can you ask a quick question? This is about what you just
Go ahead.
said, which is those folks that have opted for the grinder pump and still have it. I'm sorry, I'll come up. The folks that who are not here, who had grinder pumps on Eastern Avenue, will they be able to have directional drilling as an option, or do they have to have something? I mean, they're not here, so I feel as if we need to sort of ask that question. The 3 houses between First Avenue and Second at the bottom of the hill that that still have the ability to have grinder pumps in this current overall plan with directional drilling, will they also be able to have directional drilling instead of grinder pumps?
So the 3 houses you are referring to, is that, I think that those are under phase 1?
I guess, yes, sure.
Yeah, so those are, yeah, those are part of phase 1. So that the design for phase 1 is already done.
So they're locked in with their grinder pumps. They will not have a directional drilling option in the
Phase 1 doesn't have directional drilling.
Oh, so actually also then, after the grinder pumps up to First, is it going to be directional drilling, or will it be the other more harsh trench? Thank you.
So from 6617 to 6761 on Eastern Avenue is phase 2.
Okay.
So these phase 2 will have either grinder pump or backyard option with horizontal directional drilling.
There's just not enough people from the neighborhood that are here, and I just wanted to ask questions.
Yeah.
I wanted to try to be able to answer them. Okay.
Okay, and then also going again to trees on the backyard alignment plan. Do you know yet, do you have tree protection plans, or is that not yet? Since, is my question gonna be premature because you're only at 30% design phase?
So we have started looking at the ones that we just discussed on the slide during the presentation. We have those already in place as a tree mitigation or tree protection plans. And moving forward, our WSSC's forester, City of Takoma Park, as well as Montgomery County Department of Environmental Protection will be reviewing all the plans and design and then providing us with various ideas to how to protect as many trees as possible.
So along those lines, and this is really a technical question, what will you be using to calculate the critical root zone as far of trees in the area to figure out which trees need tree protection plans?
I would like to have Doug Seaver, WSSC forester, to take this question.
I'm Doug Severs. I'm the urban forester for WSSC.
Nice to see you again.
The answer to your question regarding critical ridge zone is that we'll follow the City of Takoma Park guidelines, which is 1 foot of CRZ, critical ridge zone radius, per inch of tree diameter. So, for example, if you had a 24-inch tree, the radius of the critical ridge zone would be 24 feet.
So
now that's only for trees that are under 30-inch diameter. The trees that are 30-inch diameter or larger, their formula is, the city's formula is 1.5 feet of CRZ radius per inch tree diameter. So if you have a 30-inch tree, you'd have a 45-foot radius of the critical root zone.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
Okay.
Hello, it's great to have somebody from the General Counsel's office here, because we've been trying to ask questions and we haven't gotten any. One thing that happened earlier is that we had discussed the idea of grinder pumps, and there seemed to be pretty much a consensus, except for we asked that WSSC, since there's 13 houses we're talking about here, and out of all of Montgomery County, there's only 2 streets that don't have the sewer in the street. We were wondering why WSSC, who would be very cheap, couldn't pick up the maintenance on that, because WSSC was giving us grinder pumps for, what, 10 years full service. And supposedly there was a law, a titular law, and a regulation that was cited as the fact that WSSC couldn't pick up these 13 houses. And I was wondering what that law or what that regulation was, so we could look it up, because I don't understand these things.
It's actually the absence of a law. The WSSC is in existence because of the legislature. The General Assembly decided to create laws to govern WSSC. So what we do depends on what those statutes say, and it's in the public utility article. And there is no statute that allows WSSC to pay for private maintenance or private systems or pipe on private property. Once it hits the private property and once it leaves our easement, any maintenance, any operation of those systems is on the homeowner. And that is how the legislature designed WSSC. And it's because we are a bi-county state agency. So we are a subset of the state.
So that would be in the enabling legislation, in the state assembly legislation that would state that?
It doesn't say that, but the fact that it doesn't say that means we cannot do that. In other words, the statute allows WSSC to do all sorts of things, to bill customers for water usage, to seek condemnation for lands that we deem necessary, to issue bonds in order to pay for our water and sewer systems that we put in the streets. What it doesn't say is that WSSC can maintain and pay for private property systems.
Just out of curiosity, can it do it for other municipal systems? For example, Takoma Park has a grinder pump. Does WSSC maintain any other grinder pumps in the area that you are in jurisdiction of?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Not that you're aware of.
No.
Okay.
So if Takoma Park had a grinder pump that it wanted WSSC to maintain, it would have to enter into some sort of agreement with WSSC, or the legislature would have to change our statute. We're not allowed to. That would be using public money, right? The customer's public money in payment for the services for private use, and we cannot do that.
I appreciate that. I work in the government as well, and I understand many times we're penny wise and pound foolish. If it were cheaper to do that, considering the cost of, the minimal cost of, it would do that as opposed to bringing the heavy equipment and disrupting the backyards. It seems like it would be, to a common sense perspective, more efficient to not waste as much taxpayer money going through the backyards when we could spend $2,000 over 20 years to maintain a grinder pump.
It's possible that would be a smarter solution or a more economical solution. I would not be able to say one way or another, but clearly the legislature wanted to draw a very bright line between use of public funds. And we can use public funds to put in all the public water and sewer mains that we want or that we think are necessary. But once it crosses that line, we cannot. Because it wouldn't just be for Takoma Park or Eastern Ave.
It's my understanding, this was the thing that was told to us, is that we would be setting a precedent for the entire county. Then lo and behold, we were surprised that only one place in Bethesda, one street in Bethesda, suffered from this. And our street suffered from it because we were the first houses back in 1920 that were built in this area. And Westmoreland was an empty field that was very easy access. So we're retrofitting for something that's over about 100 years old, which is not something there's a lot of other precedents in the county that have a 100-year-old problem that was designed this way. My understanding is the standard way to do it now is to put it in the street whenever possible, and to do it by gravity whenever possible. So I get confused with setting precedents when I don't see any other precedents seem to be coming up.
It's not really setting precedent, it's that we don't have the authority to do that.
So because it's not in the law, we assume that we don't have the authority. So you only have authority for what is explicitly given to you in the law.
Correct.
So a change in the
Correct.
law could for 5 houses or 6 houses could change that.
Good luck.
All right, I was just curious. I have some other questions. Somebody else want to ask a question? Okay, go ahead.
Since you brought up the topic of the grinder pumps, and most of you are new. We've had this discussion that's going on for, I think, 7 years now. And we talked about grinder pumps, and grinder pumps, when they were first presented to us, was, well, if you wanted it in the street, you could have grinder pumps, but you wouldn't want to do that. And then the next year's presentations came in with a grinder pump solution, completely abandoning the backyard solution for the area that you're calling phase 2. We were looking at both of those options, and the little tiny thing that you mentioned is not so tiny when you're talking about private maintenance. Those grinder pumps, as of about 4 years ago or 5 years ago, came with a 2-year warranty, and they were going to purchase an additional 10 years, 12 years warranty. After that, the owners would be responsible for the maintenance, and you could get a service contract. At the time, the information provided on the website by the WSSC on a service agreement to do that was $300 a year. And not only that, but when you would have a problem with the grinder pump, you wouldn't know where to go. WSSC wouldn't take any responsibility for telling, well, you have to do this and then file a claim with your service agreement provider. But there really wasn't a clear way on how that would go. And most of us, by the time those pumps would go in and the service agreement that you would pay for would be completed, will be very, very elderly. And the prices, I'm almost sure, would not be $300 a year. I'm sure it's going to be more than $300 a year. So we went back and forth. We were very close to voting to agree to grinder pumps. The thing that stopped it in the middle of it was ownership of the pumps. Now, I have been in contact with each one of our legislative representatives. One of them is in Congress now. And they said that they have no authority over the WSSC. Now, I understand the original establishment of the WSSC. It is a quasi-governmental organization in which the commissioners are appointed jointly by Prince George's County and Montgomery County. But apparently the thing that they left out of the legislation was any kind of governmental authority to change, mitigate, influence the WSSC's decision. So you're right, there is no law for some things, but there is no establishment of who would make the law. Would it be the county? Would it be the state? So the question would be, because tonight I can call our elected representatives and say, can you introduce something in the General Assembly that would give the WSSC authority to take responsibility? I would think it'd be more in terms of a grant or a rebate, because they say that most of the funding for the WSSC comes from the user, what we pay in our fees. You get a little bit from the state and a little bit from the counties, and they, as I said, make the recommendations for the commissioners. So if you're saying that if the state of Maryland were to tell you and give you the authority to take a portion of our fees to maintain the grinder pumps, since it's between 13 and 17 houses, depending on how you configure it, then that might be a solution. Okay, but what we're looking at is being 85 years old and the sewer's backing up, and we don't know what to do. And then in order so that we wouldn't know what to do, maybe at that time it's $500 a year or $1,000 a year. We don't know. And that level of uncertainty is what stopped it in its tracks. We were not willing to take on that degree of liability.
I'm also.
I may ask, what was the question?
What's the question?
The question, and again, I want to thank you again for having the legal representation from WSSC. We actually asked for that for every year since we've been doing this, because a lot of times when we would come up with a joint solution and the engineers and the project manager and everything, oh, that sounds okay, then it would go back and it would get nixed. And the reason given for it being nixed is the legal department said they couldn't do it, but they wouldn't say why they couldn't do it. They couldn't say what the issue was. It was just legal says we can't do it. So if you're saying you do not have the legislative authority, is it the state of Maryland or is it Montgomery County that could give you that authority?
State of Maryland.
State of Maryland. Okay, so that's my question. Is that would have to do that? Okay, thank you.
This just came up, I'm not sure our people will go for grinder again, but the question is, if we do go for grinder pumps, because that is the best solution to have it in the front. I think everyone here knows that. Grinder pumps are just undesirable by some. Would WSSC pay for the heavy up that was just mentioned that would be necessary for, you know, all the install costs if we could get a, you know, that solution for the front?
You mean if there was unanimous voting
Let's just say
for
in
the
a
front?
fabulous world, we get everything in the front.
And what
Would
do you mean?
WSSC pay for all the installation costs, the heavy up that is necessary for the electrical to run the grinder pumps?
That I would have to,
I mean, 'cause
Pass
that's a
along
big burden to
to-
put on a homeowner.
right, I understand that. I believe that we are purchasing the grinder pumps. We're installing them. We're having inspectors come in.
Is it part of the
and-
installation fee to heavy up the electrical?
Oh, the electrical?
The electrical that's necessary to
Mhm.
run the grinder pumps. We're just trying to figure out what the real cost of this is, since we were talking costs. And I know at least the previous people wanted
Mhm.
the grinder pumps. They, you know, WSSC people wanted us to have grinder pumps. That was a nice solution for WSSC. Less, you know, less destroying of neighborhood, but, you know, people didn't want the burden of having to maintain them. So we're just still trying to nut out what those costs would be to us.
Understood.
So we get another vote.
Hold on.
Okay, for the,
Oh, I'm sorry, can I just say something? Thank you for directional drilling.
you're welcome. For the grinder pump, what is included is to create an outlet which is dedicated for the grinder pump, add a new outlet, electrical outlet, that is dedicated to run the grinder pump. That is included in the construction. And the grinder pump, and there is a panel board. I would say there are some other accessories necessary for the grinder pump. Those are included in the construction.
So all the electrical,
All the electrical accessories
covered.
necessary
right.
for the grinder pump, and electrical cable that runs from your panel to the back of the house to create a new outlet, electrical outlet for that grinder pump. So those are included in the construction.
So zero cost to the homeowner for 12 years.
That still doesn't answer the question. If your existing panel can't handle the extra outlet. That's what she means by heavy up.
Right, so your existing panel should be able to handle.
Or you pay for the heavy up. That's all we want to hear. Do you pay for the heavy up? Yeah, it was unclear. I agree with you. But then he said he'd cover everything, so.
So that, yeah, that is,
For
that, we have not decided that yet.
You haven't decided that yet.
Right.
That's a big, yeah, how can we vote if you haven't decided who's going to cover that? That's a pretty
So
important
that's,
point.
yeah, to replace the panel, that's,
I'm sure as there's
Or-
there'd be like 2 houses, if any. You know, I mean, most of us have a panel that would accommodate it, but you can't burden those who, especially some of those might be elderly people. You know, you can't burden them with that.
right,
heavy up.
so we need to, yeah, we need to complete the inspection of each houses, like we did for phase 1. And all we need is a available space in the panel board to add new breaker. So as far as we have that, we should be able to add new breaker and create outlet for the electric, for the grinder pump.
So you still haven't really directly answered that question, right? Okay, you still have not directly answered. If someone needs to do a full-on heavy up, you're not answering whether or not you'd cover that cost for that individual.
So we have not decided.
You haven't decided.
Right, so
Okay.
that is undecided, yep.
All right, and then this is really a moot point because I am grateful for the directional drilling, but we did go through a lot to try to have a gravity sewer situation in the front, and I know it was really complicated to have each of the houses plumbed to have that circumstance, and I just want to know, because no one has brought it up again, we always had wanted to be informed to understand why this, understanding it's a super complicated situation. We get that. But is there a legal reason? Is there another reason why we've never really discussed that type of a situation again, where everything would be in the front, but it would be a gravity sewer? Because we got some good responses. You guys spent the time, you know, came to our houses, looked at it, and we never got a report as to why you've now not decided to use that particular methodology.
Never got an explanation
Yeah.
why we went through that exercise, and WSSC never communicated anything about that to us, about the findings and the justification
the issues were with putting it in the street could not be done. And this was done, this was agreed to by the general manager of WSSC. We've never gotten a report. And now we're asked to vote without getting a report on what we discussed before.
I mean, if nothing else, we've invested and we're curious. You know, you could say why, and we'd have to understand it, you know, but we'd like to know why, you know? Yeah.
Around, and when we were told, well, that house's porch needs to come down for this to happen, and they came and said, no, you can do it without taking the porch down. So we don't even know. You know, you had experts who said one thing, and you had other experts who said other things, and we never got a report on the individual houses. Ours would be very simple, actually. Our houses are very big home. But each house, it's 17 houses, we were supposed to get a report on what it would take for that to be, adjustments to be made to those houses to be able to be connected to sewer and the street.
So that would be, just to be clear, that you're talking about gravity in the street and gravity from the first floor or from the basement?
No, the whole, from the, the people who came, your,
The people who came out and asked them what they were asked about.
yeah, your
We come here, we talk all the time, and then we go over the same thing. I'm not gonna tell you what the issues are. WSSC knows very well what the issues are. We just wanted to know, we wanted to get a report after everybody came out and looked at each of our houses individually. And what, I mean, why are we having a new plan when we haven't gotten a report on the last
yeah.
plan?
It would just be nice to know what your findings were. I mean, I know Matt for sure was there, along with some other WSSC plumbers, as well as a few structural engineers who came back with the other, the
17
Crystal.
houses. And this was agreed to by the general manager in a meeting here at Takoma Park with our legislative representatives, both the county representative and the city of Takoma Park.
Just want to know what the answer was, really. You don't need to mince anything. Did you get an answer? You know?
I was also at that meeting, and what was agreed upon was that if you all had questions about your specific home, you all would have the inspectors, the plumbers to go and outline what would need to happen for individuals' homes. Those are offered and given to those residents who contacted us to ask those specific questions. They were not going to be offered that we would go in for each individual home. We offered it to every individual home if those customers wanted to have it. So I believe your home was looked at. I believe your home was looked at. I think there were a few other homes that were looked at. So at that time, you all received what was necessary for your home to be able to take over on gravity sewer. So we aren't going to do it for each individual home if the homeowners did not request that we give them that. There are a number of homeowners who were not interested in the grinder pump option, so they did not contact us. So the front yard gravity option. So they did not request that. So there will be no comprehensive report for all 17. I believe it was only 3 or 4 of you all who asked for it. So that's where that came from. You all were out. It was outlined for you all when they met with you all, and that was the option that was offered to you all. It wasn't offered to do a written report for everyone in the home. Now, if you need a follow-up for that, I could talk to the plumber and see. I don't know if they have that. I believe that was a year ago, or I'm not sure when it was, but the front yard gravity sewer, I recall it being quite expensive since people had to replumb their home. So
It would actually be useful, since we've lived through turnover of staff quite frequently, to have a written report that we could look at and question. I think a lot of people didn't know that was a possibility. In fact, the most difficult.
What do you mean in terms of not knowing that was a possibility?
I don't think everybody there knew that they had a plumber coming around that was going to look at. I walked with, it wasn't just 2 or 3, it was like 5 or 6. And out of 17, that's a fair percentage. The second piece was that, not all the houses require the same kind of
Absolutely.
problem of going down to a finished basement. Many of them don't. It's the difficulty seemed to be when you have a finished basement and you're below grade, which leads me to some of the engineering questions I have.
Okay, let me back up one step. First of all, you're right. Not every house, like I just said, requires that. Everyone was given notice that this was an opportunity. We stated it at the community meeting, and I believe it was part of the mailing that went out. The city had even agreed to go with us if they needed to, so people were notified of this. But if you have some more specific engineering questions, ask those, and we'll see what we can do as a follow-up report for that.
Let me follow up on that. That's important right now, which is the reason that I think I do recall now, thank you. I do recall that you did put that out, that sign up for this. But there was either misinformation or real information on which sides, I don't know. But people thought that they were going to be responsible for the cost
Of the plumbing?
replumbing their houses.
They are.
And that was not what was said by the general,
No, what was said by the general manager during that meeting, and this was, it was followed up in the last public meeting about this, was said by the general manager at that meeting is that we would explore options. You all implored to us to explore grants and different options, and we said, well, we can't do that because of our function. But if you all as a community wanted to look at that, at the last public meeting about this last summer, you got up and said that we said we would look at grants, and I said, no, you all said as a community you would look at it. That's what was said by the general manager. If there were grants that were available, you all could explore that and we could work into that. That's what was said.
Well, I don't want to go mincing back and forth because I actually have recorded many things, and so I could be wrong, but I do recall her saying that cost was not an option. So, I mean, it was fine. It didn't, she wasn't concerned about the money, and we would sort out, if we had budgetary figures, perhaps it would cost the same amount of tearing up the backyard versus replumbing
She never
our
said cost was
houses.
not an option. She
No,
said
no,
if it
cost
was balanced, we could look at different
Well,
options.
that's not exactly what she said either. I mean, neither one of us said what she said, but it doesn't matter. Point being, my understanding of what she said was she was going to consider the cost of it, and that WSSC, wasn't saying no to paying for that. She said they were
Yeah,
they
that's
were
right.
not going to. It wasn't not.
Because we didn't know what we were talking about. My name is Jean Meyer Capps. I'm a
Yes.
co-owner of 6737 Eastern Avenue, Takoma Park, Maryland, 20912, and I am formally asking for the WSSC to give me a cost estimate, what it would cost to connect our house to a gravity-fed sewer in our street. I can't speak for the other people who live there, but the others that are here that are willing to request can make the request here now, because that was the idea, was to find out how much would it be, and then WSSC could say we'll pay it, or they could say we won't pay it.
Okay.
Okay, and if they said it's cost prohibitive or we are not allowed to pay for it, and we would say, okay, how much is it going to be? Then we could pursue other options. There are environmental mitigation funds available, but we can't apply for them if we don't know what we're applying for and what the cost will be. Each one of those houses is going to be different, but what we're just being told is we're not going to tell you how much it's going to cost, and so you can't go any further with it. Okay, what we really want, and everybody on my street really wants, is we want gravity-fed sewer in the street like everyone else in Montgomery County except us has, or just about, the majority.
I'm finding myself confused at this point because I thought at the last public meeting, WSSC presented information that to do laterals down to a gravity-fed sewer would expose foundations of many homes, and that it was no longer being considered as an option, but I'm not hearing that.
You're absolutely right. If you all can speak to that. We
Yeah.
couldn't find people, engineers currently. I think Wilson T. Ballard said they would not be able to sign off on that because it would be so close to the foundation. And that was expressed, I believe, to some of the residents
Well, and I thought it was part of
before
the
that.
public meeting, and there was also some standards relative to engineering.
Right.
That
So
would
these
not
are the
allow
two
for the
options,
depths.
right.
So the reason the sewer in the front was no longer being pursued is because the excavation of the lateral to where the sewer would have to be in the street created foundational instability on
Right.
homes.
There were originally 3 options, and then they were reduced down to 2 because of that very
Okay,
reason.
so that's why the gravity-fed sewer in the street is no longer an option.
Right.
Um,
Right. And there were some houses that it would disturb the foundation.
That report is somewhere. Yeah, it was after. I mean, it should take time. It's not our houses, but we didn't. I didn't see a report.
We can look, because WSSC, as far as I know, has that information based on the evaluation of the depth of the laterals and the depth of the sewer main. Right. It has to do with the topography of the home and where the sewer was going to end up in order to flow to second. Yeah. But that information was provided in a report. Okay. Well, and maybe we can ask WSSC
We'll find the
to unearth
report
that.
and thank you, Daryl, we'll find the report because it was initially 3 options. Front yard sewer could tumble and topple someone's home. Again, we can't take responsibility for that. But the people who asked for those types of inspections received them.
Got the inspections, but not the report.
We'll get
We got the that's all we were asking for is the information.
We'll find the report and make sure that it's posted online.
And the link to it when you do it, so that we know, we get an email that says it's posted. Sure.
I have an engineering questions. Ironically, I wrote this down early on. I didn't think this controversy would come up, but we are talking about doing laterals from the back of the house through the alley, through the distance between the houses, whether or not you're doing gravity sewers or you're putting sewers in the back. So it seems like we're digging trenches between the houses that would disrupt the foundations. And I'm just curious why one does and one doesn't. Also, we're talking about when we put those trenches for the water in the front, we would be disrupting plants and trees there, which we haven't counted. So I'm just trying to understand, you know, if you're going to dig that trench anyway, why is one so disruptive and why is one not so disruptive? And if indeed you could use directional drilling or something to do grinder pumps in the back from the street, why that would be disruptive to the foundations and otherwise it's not. So I'm just trying to understand the engineering there.
Yeah. From an engineering perspective, the water lateral going from the street around to the back of the house, and possibly the grinder pump feed, which would go from the grinder pump out to the street, would be pressurized, so it would only need to be about 3.5 feet deep.
I see.
Which would be much less of a trench
I
than
see.
taking gravity around from the back of the house. That would be a very deep trench. So that's kind of, I think, where the I hope that helps you understand
Okay.
why the gravity wouldn't be feasible coming around from the back of the house.
Okay. Thank
Also,
you.
It's
the width of the trench is much narrow. The width of the trench is much narrower with the
Okay.
pressure than the gravity, because you would, with the depth, you would have to get a trench box inside of it. So you expand your trench if you have to put, it's a much larger trench.
Okay. Thanks. That's helpful. Also, now, my understanding is we're talking about a 20-foot right-of-way in the back of the house, which means that you can't plant anything there that will stay there. Now, if we're using directional drilling, do we still need that 20-foot easement that basically says, in perpetuity, you can put a bulldozer, drive down the backyards, and anything that's in the way gets run over?
The easement is for the purpose of being able to maintain that line. Now, sewer pipes do not need as much maintenance as water pipes do. If you've ever seen any kind of breakage, you will note that it's generally 90% of it is going to be a water main that's broken because of the pressure and because of well, the various things, corrosion, things like that that happen to pipes. Sewer pipes are a different thing. We very rarely have sewer breakage or leakage unless people build on top. And I mean like build on top. Heavy, you know, footers, walls, you know, brick walls, things of that nature, and they crush the sewer and cause them to break. So yes, we would need a 20-foot wide easement, but I believe Your houses have a 20-foot setback back there from the county, no? 10? Yeah, I think I checked too.
Yeah.
But in any event, you would be prohibited from constructing anything in that 20-foot space. You could plant plants. I would dissuade you from planting trees right on top of our sewer pipe
Right.
because their roots are going to go right to that pipe. And they will infiltrate that pipe, which means we will have to come out and clean that pipe.
So I have talked to an engineer from upstate New York who's fairly well experienced. He says often in that situation they'll double line the pipes. They'll actually have one pipe inside the other. And if you need to do repairs, you can go to the manhole, pull the other pipe out. Is that something that's being thought about in this situation?
We do line much of our pipe. We do trenchless on most of our pipe. The problem with your pipe in your area is the type of pipe it is and the condition. But the line of pipe, the pipe has to be in decent condition. If it's collapsed or if it's ovaled, you can't line it, or the size of the pipe. We can't line anything really under an 8-inch pipe. So if it's collapsed, we still have to go in and do point repairs and repair those sections of pipe. So in your case, the pipe is in such poor shape in the whole backyard. By the time you did point repair, you're basically replacing the whole pipe before you line it.
For the
So
city,
we currently now do line. You'll see as we go in a manhole, from one manhole to the other. We clean it. You inflate a liner. You cure the liner. But anytime a pipe is damaged, or offset joints or anything in that situation, and you have a lot of offset joints. If you go down and look at the camera, you would see that you can't line something in that condition. It would have to be repaired before you could even line it.
what I'm really, that's an excellent reason why, when we set up the new one, if we set up the new one, again, this was in Syracuse for the city, they basically put new pipes in with liners up front. So if there was any issue of leakage or anything, you could pull the old liner out and put another one in. So would you guys be setting this up? Again, I'm thinking here of reducing the amount of, a lot of it, we're on a hill. We like to, at least I like to have plants, at the end of our yard. And I'm not looking for a big oak. I'm looking for, Leland cypress, although I don't want to tell the tree guys here because that's invasive and I'll get shot. But it would be nice to have some plants and some things back there. If that's the case, we'd like to minimize the probability that there's going to be a bulldozer coming back there, crunching everything. I agree with you that, it's typically the water mains that freeze up and you hear. But it would be nice to have something where you had very minimal probability of using that easement and telling the person that we're selling to behind us, guess what, you got 20 feet of this 50-foot yard, 60-foot yard, and you can't use that. You have to pay increasing taxes for it. In fact, I don't think we're going to get back from WSSC what our tax liability is. But is there a way that we could construct this from day one so that you could repair it without having to typically dig it up?
I can answer some of that. One, as you know, the technology today is much better on even the type of pipe. The material we're using is much better than what the older pipe was. This pipe you had
is 100 years
is
old.
100 years old.
Right.
If we got another 100 year, I don't think any of us have to much worry about it. We're not going to be here. But the pipe we're using now will outlast the old pipe. The other thing what WSSC is doing is because in the last several years, WSSC's got more aggressive in their rehabilitation of pipe. So there's a lot of pipe that is 50 to 80 years old that we are lining now in doing that. So we can extend it for another 50, 60 years. The issue here, of course, this is one of the rare conditions that we do not currently have an easement. Most people, if they have the sewer going through the backyard, there's already an easement created. So this is just a very rare case. of that.
So could we get a commitment to double lining these pipes from the get-go?
I don't think double lining is not really going to extend, because the type of liners we use, unless you do a slip liner, which would not be real easy, the liners that we use, you can't just pull those liners out. You have to do what's called ripping them. And when you rip one, you also, especially with the new PVC pipe, you would be ripping the PVC pipe also. It's a machine that goes through and actually just rips through it. We do some things called pipe bursting that we do when we can. But this, by double lining, it's not going to really extend the life, because if the other liner starts wearing out, it'll still catch the debris. The PVC pipe, the pipe we use to schedule, the pipe we use doesn't have the buildup as the old terracotta and the old concrete pipe had. It actually will not have as much sewer buildup. It's easier to maintain, easier to clean.
Okay. I guess the only other question I'd have is, what, since we're talking about a forced vote here, what enabling state legislation says that WSSC can force a vote and the outcome can be kind of prescribed the way that you're saying that it is? In other words, if one person disagrees, then we're doing it the other way.
There is no legislation that says WSSC can force a vote. We're doing that as there is no, the reason we're doing that is to give you all an opportunity to think about what you want and to have a chance to vote.
Okay.
The very first alignment for this project, as you probably are aware, was the backyard alignment. That was 7 years ago or 8 years ago. We didn't start talking about front alignment until second or third year into the project already. The preferred solution, because this is what is the best and what WSSC does the best, is gravity. When you all have your individual grinder pumps, you all can do whatever you want to your grinder pumps. We have no authority over what you do to your grinder pumps. You can turn them off. You can go downstairs and take a hammer to them. You can't do that to our pipes. We have authority over our pipes. So we have some measure of control. We have absolutely no control over your grinder pumps. And it's probably a good thing. It's the same thing with electrical. We have no control over what you do with your electrical. You can keep it off all the time. You can keep it on all the time. You can switch wires. We have no idea what you're doing with your electrical.
Thanks. Any other questions?
Well, I just would like to know when that report, we'll be able to have that report about the front stuff. Just when, and can we know which houses had foundational issues in between?
It's up now.
Because it wasn't mine and it wasn't hers. So we just want to know. I mean, we put a lot of effort. Look, thank you again for directional drilling in the back. Happy Plan B. Obviously, we would all prefer to have gravity in the front, but it's an impossible dream. But I just like to have the questions answered because they come up again.
It's actually up on the website already, as it has been since it was put up in spring 2017. So it's up on the website, and it is entitled, Alignment Investigation. It was published spring 2017. Am I leaning on something? So we will happily email out the link tomorrow, our communications team, but it's on the front page of the website if you look at project materials. So
I'm on that website now, and you go to what?
scroll down.
Past community historical updates.
It says project materials, so it's right before community presentations and historical updates. There's a section that says, and it's the 1, 2, 3, right underneath it where it says Alignment Investigation, spring 2017. All righty. And we'll make sure you all get the link.
Could I just ask a couple questions before we get to the voting? The information that's on the website, I apologize, I haven't been there in a while. Is all the information about the easement conditions, the cost, the manufacturer, the grinder pump, et cetera, anything that we would use to make a decision on the vote, is it all there and is all still the same as it has been? Or have you had any changes in any of the providers or the conditions of the easements or anything like that?
The easements are going to be personal. So your easement cost, or what your easement is appraised at, may be different from your neighbor's. Right? We're going to have appraisers appraise each property for the 20 feet, and then you get the value of that appraisal in a check from WSSC. So it could be $2,300, it could be $4,000. It depends on the property, the width, the condition, what's on there.
Right. The conditions of the easement, though, are posted online?
I'm not sure what you mean by conditions. The restraints?
Well, so for example, going back many years, we had some discussion about the easement, including the agreement for the easement to include replacement of anything that was going to be taken down if they had to come in and dig up the pipe again. For example, there's been a change, I'm sure, in the cost per square foot of the easement since then. I would assume it's gone up.
Right.
I'm asking because I don't like to do things verbally. I like to see things in writing. I'm just asking what's on the web. Would I be able to find on the website what the easement will entail? And the easement's only part of it. Is the grinder pump the same that you're offering? Is it the same manufacturer, same warranty as the first time we talked about grinder pumps? I'm just
Yes.
wondering because I have a partner, so I need to go home and share with him where to find the information. I don't need to go over the details right now. Just can I find it there? That's all I want to know.
Can you find it on the website?
Right.
Okay, my name is Paul Gray.
Yep,
I'm the
I know.
property acquisition agent. Okay, in terms of the easement, we did have it appraised. This was the last time, and they appraised it at, well, let me just say, we were looking at the open cut at first, and out of the 17 owners we had talked to, or we only sent like 9, and we had like 4 people that signed the document. But I didn't do anything with the document. I still have it today because we weren't sure which way we were going. We were going to either do the back option yard or the front. So, but just the cost for the easement, your property has been valued at. We're looking at a 42. It's 42. Most of the lots are 42 feet wide. And we're talking 42 foot long and 20 foot wide. So we're talking 840 square foot. At a price, the fee simple purchase price is $48.41 per square foot.
That's what I'm asking. That's on the website.
No, it's not on the website.
Because that's a problem for me because I have a partner.
Okay.
And I
Okay.
don't, like I say,
All right.
can we have a visual on some of this stuff?
But you know what?
Be able to do that?
We'll talk about that. Yeah, we can talk because here's the thing. The only problem is I had it appraised for open cut, so we were taking into consideration trees, removal of trees and stuff, and now that's kind of changed now because we're doing HDDP. So. That's going to it's probably going to have to be reevaluated. But I can tell you that the cost per square foot is probably going to be it might change too because now it's been over almost since April of 2016. So we're talking almost another.
And we have many.
Huh?
Gene, just a minute. I just want to finish up because I need to go. It's very quick. I don't really need to go into the details right now for all of these folks. All I'm asking is we have many neighbors who are not here tonight, and they're going to want to know too. So can we have as much online
we'll
as
talk
possible?
and put that out there for you guys.
Would we also be able to get before the vote is due the designation of which of the other trees that you're talking about removing? Because you're asking us to vote again without knowing specifically which trees on our properties would be affected.
Right, so to come up with accurate number of trees and their location, we need to get to at least 90% design because right now we're at 30% design and we don't even know where the grinder pump or the service laterals are exactly located.
So we would have to vote before we know the
Right,
impacts on the
to
property.
know the exact number of, accurate number of trees and their location, we need to get to at least 90% design.
So why do we need to vote in 2 weeks?
Um,
Because we've been waiting 7 years.
Right, so what we have presented
I mean,
here.
you're asking us to vote without full information on 2 options that are in perpetuity for our properties, as far as we can tell. But we don't have full information, and many of our neighbors are not here to hear the presentation. And
Right, so what we have presented here is what is available as of 30% design. For anything beyond that, or for accurate information, we need to get to at least 90% design.
And how long would that take you?
It depends on which way we're gonna go. So for grinder pump, if we go with grinder pump option, it'll take 6 additional months than the backyard option. So we're looking at sometimes somewhere 6 months to complete the design if we go with backyard option, and somewhere 1 year if we go with grinder pump option.
So you're asking us to vote without full information?
So we're asking you to vote depending on what we have, and I hope we have answered all of the concerns that were raised before. And obviously, we cannot develop, I mean, I can check back and get back to you, but then we cannot develop 100% design for both of the options parallelly. So we need to make decision based on 30% design to see which way we're gonna move forward with.
Okay, thank you.
I was kind of chiming in because I didn't want Paul to have to get up again. When you were saying cost, we were talking about a payment. So you're talking about a cost to you or payment for the easements? I wasn't clear on what you were saying. I've developed a hearing impairment since I last talked to you.
What I was talking about was payment for the easement.
Payment
Yeah.
for the easement, and
For
so
the
it's
easement.
currently at $48 per square foot.
48.41 per square foot.
Okay, well,
So-
that's closer to what we're paying in taxes.
Yeah.
We did a
Okay.
study on this, yeah.
But for the taking, the easement taking, you times that by the 840 square foot, and then you take 50% of it. So
Why
it
is
would
that?
come because that's what the easement taking is, and it's only looking at the land value, not the improvements on the property.
No, I'm
Okay.
assuming just
Okay.
land, just
So
land.
so if you take the 840 times the 48.41, you come up with 40,644.40, and 50% of that comes to 20,332.20.
Okay, because we did a study, and this is a little bit out of date, maybe 5
Okay.
years ago.
Okay.
A group of us got together, and at that time, we were paying property taxes depending on the year. It's between $45 and $55 a square foot. About 5 years ago is what the taxes will be paying on that land. So this is closer to what our discussions were very early on, where we were told it'd be a bit more like $5 or $6 a square foot, and there was a big disparity between what we're
Yes.
paying on taxes for
Yes.
that land
That
and
is
what we would
that is
get as a
correct.
permanent
That is
easement.
correct. At the time, I think we did what the appraiser did. He looked at all the houses and this way we went back and realized we have to look at each one individually, and that's where we came.
Many
up.
of the houses we're
Yeah.
talking about, the land is worth more than the house that sits on it.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's why we're asking that. You'll get these questions if we know
Right,
the
right.
answers to start out with. You won't
Right.
have to go round and round and round about it.
And the way we have it now, we're going to have temporary access areas that we would have to pay for, along with the 10-foot temporary strip. So all that will be included in the price too. And I just of that 48.41 for temporary, it's 10%. Yeah. Of the
you're
taking.
So you're talking about it
Okay.
being worth $48 and change, and you would give 10% at about $4, between $4 and
Yes,
$5
yes, for
the
temporary,
for the
for
square
temporary.
footage for the temporary.
Temporary, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Just
So
trying to
just a-
understand what.
But we'll see if we can get together and put something out there for you guys. But like I said, That was in 2016, so we're probably gonna have to look at it again because we haven't. We stopped because we didn't know which way we were gonna go with this.
Understood.
Okay, so this is just a ballpark figure what we're talking about. Okay.
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 We will ask those questions, and you'll have an updated amount. You'll have updated information when we get to that point. Is that right?
Yes, when depending on, we're not, I guess it wouldn't be feasible for WSSC to go forward and do appraisals when we don't know if we're doing
No,
the backyard.
understood. That's
Okay.
that's understood. We just
if
want
we
to
go
know
that
what
way,
the
yes.
basis was and
We'll-
how the
we'll-
calculations were being made. That's very helpful.
It'll be an updated
That's very
appraisal. We'll
helpful.
update it and get it. For
Well,
you.
there's a couple of questions that I have that are not necessarily related to each other and not related to this.
Okay.
Real quick one for the engineers. PVC, we know it'll last probably beyond our life expectancy, but what is the lifespan of PVC pipe anticipated? How long is it expected to last before it starts breaking? I had heard we had PVC put in our house when we renovated it, and there was no discussion of that. Now I'm hearing reports of PVC deterioration. So can you tell me what you know about that?
They're usually saying 100-year life for the PVC, about the same as ductile iron.
But PVC hasn't been around for 100 years, so how would they know? I don't think it's been around for 50 years, has it?
So based on the specification of PVC pipe, we can expect the life expectancy 100 years life expectancy. So I don't know if PVC is around for 100 years or not, but then what we go by is their specification.
I'm sorry. I'm hearing impaired. I'm sure you're speaking loud enough, but
So the PVC materials specification is what we refer to, and we can expect up to 100 years. I mean, somewhere estimated 100
okay.
years life expectancy.
like I said, that's
Yep.
way beyond. I'm not going to be around to worry about it, but I just didn't know if they had that. Another question that's not related to that one: when we were considering putting a new fence, like replacing the fence between our house and the adjoining house. The adjoining house has a wonderful 150-year-old oak tree that is not on the property lines. But when we were considering I wanted to put a stockade fence in, and you have to put, posts in. I was told by the city of Takoma Park that we would have to post a bond. We had to have a plan to protect the roots of the tree, even though it's not our tree. The roots go into our yard. We would have to post a bond in case our installation of that fence damaged the roots to the tree and then the tree itself. And this is really a question for City of Takoma Park, but it's just to give you a heads up. Will WSSC be posting bonds for those trees for which it will have tree protection plans in case they don't get protected and they die?
No.
They won't post any bonds.
No, we will not be posting bonds.
Is WSSC exempt, or are your contractors exempt from the tree regulations of the City of Takoma Park?
WSSC is exempt.
Okay, that's the answer to the question. Okay, so so we asked about that, and so like I said, these questions are not related to each other.
Sure.
Our house, I looked at the plans, and you have in your posted plan that we looked at today that we have a fence in our backyard, and I'm going to take it down and put it back up. No problem. There's also a retaining wall that drops, I would say, somewhere around 3 feet. I think it's a retaining wall. It looks like it holds back the dirt from our yard from sliding further down the hill into our backyard neighbor's dining room. Okay. I didn't see anything about that, and maybe it's because you haven't gotten up to the phase 2 planning. But one, I'm assuming, because you usually do this, is there will be plans for repairing or replacing that retaining wall. But in the event that your construction causes erosion of dirt, because it is a straight slide, we said we're on a hill, erosion from our yard into the backyard neighbor's yard, are we liable for that?
You would not be liable unless you did something to exacerbate that. WSSC will restore and replace anything that it disturbs. So if there is a 3-foot high retaining wall, we will replace or put back that 3-foot high retaining wall.
Okay.
Now, if you decide you want a higher mound of hill back there and want to truck in some more soil and put additional soil back there, and that causes erosion because the wall no longer reaches the top of the hill, that would not be WSSC's liability. That would be your liability at that point.
I'm not anticipating any problem, but I
Okay.
just know that if the soil in our yard isn't held back in some way, like removing the vegetation that's holding it in now,
Mhm.
and it slides in there, and they come up and they've got a bone to pick with us, I just wanted to know what our liability would be. Thank you.
Sure.
So I just want to make sure I understood what I heard. If WSSC goes and does directional drilling and disrupts the soil back there, and the retaining wall gets broken, if indeed you replace it and your engineer says this meets my qualifications, if a year later and we haven't done anything and that thing breaks, WSSC is no longer liable. We're liable for that?
No, that's not what I said.
Okay, I'm trying to understand.
It would depend. I mean, if you had not done anything,
Right.
and it could be shown that we were negligent in some fashion by either the person that we hired or our decision making or the materials used, then that would be a WSSC issue and a problem for WSSC. It's also possible it could be an act of what they say God, a tree falls over, or we have extreme rainy seasons for successive years in a row that causes something like that to happen, erosion. We cannot build for every possible eventuality. We build for what we think might happen. So that might be a point of contention or another issue.
But effectively, if my neighbor sues me over that retaining wall, we can bring WSSC into court as part of the participants in this.
Yes.
Okay.
You can always bring WSSC into court.
And one other comment I'd like to make is if something, can you hear me or do I need to get the mic? You can hear me? You guys can hear me? One other comment as well is if that does happen, the first thing I may suggest is that you reach out to WSSC directly, because we do have issues where we perform a lot of construction in areas, a lot of areas where we're replacing pipe. Things do happen through the course after we install the pipe, months later, sometimes years later. So we're always open to investigating it and working with homeowners to try to figure out what the source is. As Claudia stated, a lot of variables, a lot of things can happen within a year's time, but at least give us the opportunity that when you recognize something happens, give us a call. We can come out, meet with you, and meet with your neighbor. And this is the same process we perform every day doing water main replacement and our sewer main replacement projects.
Any other questions or comments? Requests? Start over? Go
Just
back
wanted to
150
chime in
years?
and I'm here. It's my voice, but a lot of other people have said things to me that they want said. Okay, so it's not all me. But I think they're going to have a real hard time voting unless we have all of the information. To vote for something when you don't know the information that Lisa, who was here before, was saying. it's going to be hard for them to make a decision. Again, because many of us own property jointly with someone else, and they both have to agree before we can say yay or nay. Our house isn't particularly, you answered the questions that I had. Our house doesn't have any of these valuable trees on it, but they're on the properties around us. Each house, as you pointed out, there's the 17 houses particularly that we're talking about, are unique, and they all have their own issues. So, I mean, we might be able to make a decision for us, but I think other people will need more information, particularly if they don't know that one of the trees on their yard, because you haven't been there to do the design yet, you don't know either. For them to say, I think they're going to have a difficult time with that, and I was just reiterating what she said.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for coming this evening. I hope we have answered some questions at least. We will try and put more information that you requested up on the website so that you have something to refer to. And I'm sure you can always contact Busan with your questions. And if you feel comfortable enough to vote, go ahead and do so. There are documents right there, the voting documents, and if you don't want to pick one up, one will be mailed to you in any event, and just return it. Thank you very much.